Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get started here. So first of all, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the June IMEDS community call. My name is Christine Yu, and I work on the IMEDS program here at the Reagan-Udall Foundation. So before we start, please note that this group has been put on mute for the time being to cut back on the background noise, and we will be unmuting everyone at the end for the question and answer period. This call is also being recorded, and we will be posting a copy of this presentation on our website afterwards. So before I turn the presentation over to Dr. Lee, I do have some updates I'd like to share with everyone with regards to the IMEDS program. As some of you may already know, the IMEDS lab will be suspended at the end of June for the remaining of the year as we continue to develop a more sustainable and predictable model to support these resources. Methods research is and will continue to be a very important and core aspect of our work here at IMEDS, and this has really been a transitional year for us, and we want to thank everyone for your support and continued interest in the program, and we want to engage our stakeholders and also the broader community in shaping and refining our methods research agenda and also our goals moving forward. We do have several research agenda projects that are currently ongoing that we're very excited about, one of which you will be hearing on this call today. Also, as part of our evaluation for the IMEDS program, we will be sending out a survey to this group to get your input and thoughts about our monthly community calls. This is a great opportunity for you to let us know if you have any suggestions or input on what you'd like to hear on these calls, and also to let us know if there's anything we can improve on and work on. So I'd greatly appreciate if you could take some time to complete the survey. So for our call today, we're very happy to have Dr. Todd Lee from the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Pharmacy to speak to us about CARMA, which stands for Center for Annotating Research Methods and Analysis. The goal of the center is really to follow cross-disciplinary research that have an impact on the ability to monitor post-market drug safety and also to synthesize these findings for the larger community. This is an IMEDS research agenda project that we're very excited about, and we're very happy to have Dr. Lee here today to share this great resource with the community. You should be able to see the presentation on your screen. You can also find the link to the CARMA website in the email I sent out yesterday. So Dr. Lee, thank you very much for taking the time to present to us today. And with that, I'll now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Christine. I'm happy to be here today to talk to you all about what CARMA is and more importantly, how you may be able to use it to keep abreast of what's happening in the field in terms of, as Christine mentioned, work related to identifying drug safety signals and methodologies that are developing in this field. So my goal is to introduce you to our center here and again try and help you all understand how we are doing what we are doing so it provides a sense as to what's actually available to you through the output that we are producing. So as Christine mentioned, we are funded by the Reagan-Udall Foundation Methods Program. It was an RFP that was released a little over a year ago that we responded to. Our official title is the UIC Center for Annotating Research Methods and Analyses, and focused on new approaches in utilizing real-world data. We launched in the fall and are about 9.5 to 10 months into our initial funding period. So I'm going to talk to you today about exactly what we have accomplished in that relatively short period of time. So as background, you probably all run into this problem. How do I keep up with what's happening in a rapidly evolving field? There's new studies constantly coming out, and it's a real challenge to keep on top of the information that's available to us as scientists and researchers, so that we can really stay informed as to what's been going on in terms of new methodologies or unique approaches to solving difficult problems. And historically, right, the model was that, all right, I'm going to subscribe to a journal and I'm going to read that journal every time it shows up, whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly, whether it's quarterly, whatever the case may be. Well, if you're like me, actually this is probably a dated picture on the right. I used to have stacks of journals on my desk that I'd promised myself I would get to, and I would never get to them. My reading list would continue to pile up. I'd have bookshelves, full of journals that I never actually read, unless I was doing some PubMed search on a specific topic and needed to pull one of those journals. Well, this is even more difficult now as the number of journals that we have available to us continues to grow. So realistically, subscribing to and reading journals is probably an inefficient way to keep up with everything that's happening in a field. And we don't have these stacks of journals anymore. We don't have bookcases full of journals anymore. Everybody's getting this information electronically. So there are tools available to help weed through some of this information. And one of those tools is signing up for an e-table of contents. So monthly, quarterly, whatever weekly releases of journals, you can get the table of contents sent to you. This may expedite finding articles that are of specific interest, but you can run into some of the same problems. I know in my email inbox there's probably tables of contents that I haven't opened yet because I'll get to those later after I've tackled all the other emails that I have to deal with in a day. So while this helps, it probably doesn't solve the problem of staying up to date with everything that we need to stay up to date with. One additional alternative is using PubMed or other search tools to send us lists of new publications in that area. And maybe this is a more efficient way to stay up to date in a specific area. For example, I've done a lot of work in chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I get routine updates of new research that's coming out in COPD, usually observational research, how I've structured my keyword search. But this doesn't necessarily help me stay up to date with all methodologies because this is an applied area. And so if I have saved topic searches in methodologic areas, I'm going to run into this information overload issue again. And so what we are trying to do with CARMA is help the community find an efficient way to stay up to date with, again, a very rapidly evolving set of research. Review articles may be another strategy to stay up to date, but this doesn't really help us stay up to date with current new publications that are coming out. So those aren't particularly helpful when we're thinking about this rapidly evolving area and how do I stay abreast of the very, very latest in what's happening. So what we've done, and others have clearly done this before, is use literature scans, right? And so what groups are doing is identifying the relevant literature, and I use sort of quotation marks here because how you define relevant literature is very important. And then you get these regular updates. I know that the Division of Pharmacoepidemiology and Pharmacoeconomics at Brigham and Women's posts regular monthly methods literature scan updates on their website. I've been a participant in the Mini Sentinel group, and historically they have sent out literature updates, although I haven't gotten those recently, so I don't know if I've fallen off their email list or if they're not doing those regularly anymore. But these are two great resources that allow us to provide one look at keeping up to date with relevant literature in this area. What I'm going to talk about for the rest of this time is what we have done with CARMA in trying to add to this resource that you all can have access to find new information or keep up to date with the growing information we have in the area of observational research, medication safety research. So let me just sort of let you know exactly what the goal of the RFP was that came out again last year, a little over a year ago. And it was to fund a center of excellence is what it was called, that would collate and summarize research that is relevant to the IMEDS mission. And so that's what we had proposed to do. Specifically, it wanted annotations of research that looked at the intersection of data analysis, medical data generation, and especially if these are relevant to medication safety and effectiveness. So as you might imagine, this is a relatively large scope, and one of our goals has been to try to define exactly what kind of literature we were looking for in response to this RFP. So our goals for our center we have 5 of them. The first one, and I'm going to walk through each of these goals. I'll introduce you to them, and then I'll kind of walk through exactly what we have done within CARMA to try and tick off each one of these goals. And that is not Clint Dempsey's goal last night, but a goal earlier in the Copa America tournament. So our goals are to first complete regular literature searches that identifies new developments in using existing data sources, or identifies new data sources that might be important for drug safety work, and comparative effectiveness work using observational data. So we've really focused on observational data methods and observational data, whether it be new uses of novel data sets, combination of data sets. So as I talk to you about what we define as relevant literature, that gives you kind of a framework for the bounds in which we began. Our mission is to, hey, what might be important, or what is important for researchers in this area of observational research when we're thinking about what articles we select for annotation. And so that's the framework for goal number 1. For our second goal is, okay, let's not just provide lists of the research, and let's not just provide a set of citations and abstracts. Let's go a step further, and let's provide annotations so that if someone is interested in this area and they log on log onto our website and look through this list, they'll get an annotation which is more than the abstract, and will provide a little bit more detail than an abstract would provide, and will give you a sense of how does this fit with observational research. Is this something that I would consider relevant to the work that I'm doing? And then do I want to go and read the full article? So it was a tool. These annotations are intended to be a tool to help you learn more about the article, but again, not providing everything, but more than the abstract would give you by just looking at abstracts. We then, as I sort of alluded to, post these summaries on a website, and part of what I'm going to do for you today is walk you through our website. We actually have 2 resources that we post our annotations to. One is a little bit more flexible in terms of searching for keywords or specific articles. The other is a list of what we have annotated to date. The fourth goal that we have is to summarize the literature that we've gone through and provide a review of at least 2 sort of unique or important areas in observational research methods over the last year. And then the final thing, which is really the tool through which all of this happens, was to provide a graduate level seminar for students at the University of Illinois to understand advanced methodologies in observational research. And this graduate level seminar was an expectation of the RFP, and again was the mechanism by which we were able to accomplish all of the other goals that we have accomplished to date. So let me talk about the who in terms of how this work is getting done and how we've kind of structured the center. So as I indicated, what we are really doing here is leveraging our graduate students in helping us go through the volumes of new articles that come out, in a specific set of journals. And by having them register for a graduate level seminar, they can earn credits to some of this work. It's not simply just volunteering to do this. Now they're receiving something out of this. And so the structure is that I sit at the top as the PI, the program, but the work is really done by everybody else. And one of the individuals who is a senior level graduate student, and I'll tell you who all these people are at the end, or at least provide a list, but Patrick Zuger is just finishing up with our program, or nearly finishing up with our program, and he is really the driving force behind leading the graduate students in terms of identifying the literature and making sure the annotations are done and determining who's going to annotate what articles. So he sits at the top of the graduate student pyramid and helps all of the other graduate students in terms of their assignment to the work that they need to complete by the end of the semester to get this graduate level credit, and helps them troubleshoot some of the issues that come up, some of which I will sort of describe to you as some of the challenges that we've experienced as part of our growth over basically the 2 semesters that this has run. It started in the fall of last year, and I ran a graduate level seminar in the fall, and then again in the spring of this past semester. So how do we do what we do in terms of getting annotations out to the community? And this is just a very high-level schematic of the process that we utilize to identify articles and then summarize those articles through our annotations. So we have a process, and I will describe to you in more detail how we've determined which journals to search, what our search strategies were, but we identify articles. Once these articles are identified by students, they determine which of them are relevant to our goals under this CARMA proposal. When they've identified a relevant article, they add it to our group library. So we have this very large group library that's shared across all of our graduate students that contains all of the articles that eventually need to be annotated. At this addition to the group library level, our senior graduate student looks at the articles that are added and kind of gives them a sniff test. Do these articles meet what we are looking for in terms of being relevant to the scientific community that is working in this area of medication safety and comparative effectiveness? If they do, he then assigns these articles to an individual student. So then out of this large library that students are contributing articles to in terms of identifying them as relevant, Patrick says, okay, I'm going to assign each of these articles to different students based on the topic area and based a little bit on the student experience, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but we had a wide variety of graduate student experience, from first-year students to those that are very mature in our program and in other programs. And so he assigns these articles. The students are responsible for creating the annotations by the end of the semester. So they're also, as part of the seminar, responsible for presenting at least 2 of the articles that they've been assigned in the seminar where we meet weekly, and I'll talk more about actually what happens in the seminar later on in the call. Once the annotations are completed, these are uploaded to our group library and separately then posted on our website and added to a publicly available group library, which I will introduce you to when I walk you through the website. So how have we identified the relevant literature? Well, we started off with a core journal list. So what we had proposed to do when we responded to the RFP was to scan the table of contents for this list of journals that's located on the right-hand side of the slide. This was our initial list of target journals. We knew that this was not an exhaustive list and that we would be adding to this list as we went through the process of identifying articles. So the way that we did that is when one of these journals produced a new issue, whoever was assigned to that journal would look through the table of contents, probably read all of the abstracts within that issue, and determine whether or not that article was relevant to what we were interested in annotating. Once those articles were identified, we asked the students at the beginning of the fall semester to help us expand our target journal list. And so when we identified a relevant article, we went through the references of that relevant article looking for new journals that we could add to our target journal list. And so this was an ever-changing list of target journals. For the first few months of the semester, we did this, and then we did it again in the spring. We revisited the list. So eventually we dropped some of these journals, added others to it, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of data at the very end of the talk that describes where we've gotten most of our articles from. Now, in addition to this core journal list, we'd also proposed to do some literature searches. So in addition to assigning a student to a set of journals that they were responsible for identifying articles from, we asked them each we assigned each of them a topic area. And these topic areas were used to facilitate PubMed searches to identify additional literature that we were missing in our scanning of our target journal list. What we had come to find out very shortly into the process is that when the students were searching their assigned topic area, we'd get lots of overlap in terms of the articles that were being identified from our target journal list and those that were being identified in the literature searches. So there was some not very efficient use of our resources in that terms. And then we were also getting lots of false positives in that the articles that they were finding were often applications and not new methodologies or novel uses of some methodology, which is what we were focused on in terms of the type of literature we were asking the students to identify. So we ended up getting a lot of false positives in our literature searches, and we found that it really wasn't at that time a useful tool in adding relevant literature to our list of articles that were going to be annotated. So after the first half of the fall semester, we suspended the literature search strategy, and we actually have engaged with a librarian here at the university to help us revisit our literature search strategy, thinking that maybe she can help us modify it in such a way that we may pick up some articles that sort of have slipped through the cracks, if you will, in terms of our target journal list. So this is an area that we're still making some modifications to in terms of literature searches. And hopefully we find a more efficient way to combine these two methods of identifying relevant literature. Importantly, we are only focused on current issues. We did not go back in time and ask students to annotate articles from a year ago. So we, as new issues came out, have focused solely on the new literature that's becoming available. We did early in the process go back to older articles to help students understand exactly what we were looking for in terms of the types of articles that we would have them annotate. So each new issue that comes out, we ask the students to identify these relevant articles and add it to our group library so that we can assign it for annotation. So one of our early challenges for our students was to really know what the it was that they were looking for. They didn't have a good sense of, sometimes because, let me give you an example. So we do not have a lot of expertise in natural language processing in our student group or in our faculty here in our department. And we were finding lots of articles in natural language processing that are potentially useful in adding new information to existing data sets. And so we knew immediately that that literature is relevant for us. But how do we know if it's a novel methodology or if it's something that people who work in the area of natural language processing wouldn't consider what we are seeing relatively novel, so it's not that important for us to annotate it in keeping people up to date on current developments of new methods, for example. And so that was one of the early challenges that we experienced because students just didn't have a good sense of what it was that we were looking for. So we spent a lot of time in the first part of the fall semester talking about what the relevant literature was. And so in the end, we provided some ground rules to the students that we're not looking for papers that are tests of an association between an exposure and an outcome. We are looking for largely methodologically oriented papers. And if you feel like it fits the bill of being a new methodology or adding on something unique to an existing methodology, grab it. Let's err on the side of over-inclusion, at least early on, and then we'll revisit these articles at the end of the semester, for example. And so that was one of our really big challenges early on, is that students were identifying everything in a table of contents as being potentially relevant. Once we got a sense as a group what exactly we were looking for in terms of the type of literature that we wanted to annotate, they had a better sense of what the duck was, to sort of steal from the graphics that I've put on this particular slide. And how we did that is, again, early in the semester, we all looked at tables of contents for the assigned journals and went through them together and said, why does this fit or why does this not fit? And then finally, once we've gotten through that process, Patrick, as I said, looks at each one of the identified articles, and he gives sort of an overall assessment of whether or not it fits into what we are interested in annotating. So let me talk a little bit about the application that we use for our group library. And I'm not intending for this to be a plug for Zotero. I'm sure there are other web-based applications that could be utilized, but we use this application called Zotero, where it was easy to share references across a large group. It's a web-based application that when students identified a relevant article, they could upload the full text and all of the information about that article into this web-based application, so that then once that's uploaded, Patrick makes an assignment of each one of these articles to an individual student. And his goal is to try to balance the workload across each of the students while also considering sort of the complexity of the article and where the graduate student is in their program, how far along they are. So not giving a first-year graduate student an incredibly complex article that they would have a very difficult time even knowing what to annotate. So this took some learning by Patrick in terms of the types of articles that students were comfortable with annotating based on where they were at in the program. And again, trying to balance the workload across each of the students within the program. What he actually did within this application, within Zotero, is once an article was uploaded, he could easily tag that article in terms of who was assigned to review it, so that when you, as a student, logged onto the application, you could see, okay, here's the 3 articles that I've been assigned for annotation. And I, as a faculty member, could do the same. I could log on and I could see who's been assigned what articles, how far along are they in the process, to really keep up to date on what was happening with annotations and article identification. So when students started this annotation process, this was also sort of relatively difficult, at least initially for some of our students. Like when they were identifying the relevant literature, they weren't sure what the annotation was supposed to look like. So what I did was I annotated a handful of papers initially on to show them what I envisioned each of these annotations to be. And so what our goal was, again, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to provide more information than was in an abstract, and not to repeat the information that's in the abstract. We fully expect that everybody that is looking through our list of articles, they can look at the abstract, and we want to add to that abstract and not be redundant with what is in that abstract. So we wanted to focus on what does this mean for the scientific community, and to provide enough information for those of you that are looking at these annotations to really identify what you feel is relevant to the particular area that you work in. Is this an article that's going to be value added for me? Should I spend my time reading this article? And we're hoping that the annotation, again, gives you slightly more than what you would get from the abstract by itself. Length became an issue. Some students would write paragraphs of annotations, and that wasn't our goal. Our goal at the end became to write a single paragraph of summary information, basically 1 to 2 sentences in the areas listed at the bottom of this slide. Give us a background and why this is important, hit on what the methods are, maybe a sentence on what they found, but then importantly, what are the conclusions and implications, and how does this fit with pharmacoepidemiology and comparative effectiveness research, so that, again, people looking through these annotations get a sense of exactly what's in this paper. What I have done for all of the annotations that have been posted on our website is I review each one of them. I'm not reviewing them necessarily for content, but I'm trying to edit them and maybe make them, if they don't hit on some of these key areas, I may send them back to students saying, okay, you've missed this. Let's add a little bit of information in terms of what it means. And if they have difficulty in really understanding, well, this is not my area of expertise, I don't know what this means, let's sit down and talk about it. So there's been a fair amount of work on my end in some of these annotations, in working with the students to get them in a place where they're comfortable with these things being posted on a public website. So what we do once the annotations are completed and I've reviewed them is that we are periodically posting them to our website. And when I walk you through our website, I describe this as really not incredibly user-friendly. It's a long list, and so you're forced to go through a long list of annotations that are posted on the website. And this probably is not, again, the most efficient way to identify articles that may be relevant to you. So we have used Zotero in providing a more user-friendly version of the annotated articles that we have processed. This has better search capabilities. You can look for keywords, so that if you're not interested in all aspects of the kinds of articles that we're annotating, but rather you may be interested specifically in signal generation studies, you could tag that keyword in Zotero and you'll get all the studies that have that keyword included in them. And so it probably is, or definitely is, a better way to specifically focus in on areas than our website is. I am working with folks in our IT department here at the university to try to figure out better ways to make our website more searchable, and potentially do some customization on our end that will improve sort of the user friendliness of the website that we currently have available. So let me talk a little bit about what the seminar was, because this was an important part of what we were trying to accomplish, and that was to help our students grow as scientists and becoming independent investigators. So what I did is offer a 2-credit-hour graduate level seminar in both the fall and the spring semester. And this was a 2-credit-hour class because we had a weekly 1-hour in-class meeting where we discussed in-depth 2 journal articles. The additional credit hour came from all of the outside work that the students were doing. I wanted to provide, again, an incentive for them to participate in this seminar, rather than just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. What can I get out of this? And so that additional credit hour, knowing that there was going to be potentially a substantial amount of work involved, because going in, I had no sense of the volume of literature that we would eventually identify. We had done some preliminary work when we were preparing the application to get a sense of how many articles might come out of some of these lists, but we didn't know how many, once all of the students registered, how much work that would be. So they get an additional credit hour for looking through the table of contents, identifying articles, and then doing the annotation. And what I've come to find out through the course of two semesters is maybe that's not even enough. Maybe the students, because of the amount of work that they're doing outside of the classroom, maybe they need another credit hour, but most of them have indicated that it's probably somewhere between a 2 and 3 credit hour class. So I'll work with them to figure out what the right sort of incentive structure is for them to continue to participate in our seminar. Each student was responsible for leading the discussion of at least one journal article each semester. And in reality, they all led the discussion of 2 journal articles each semester. And going in, I outlined the responsibilities that they would have when they participated in this seminar. So it wasn't going to be a surprise to them when they show up for the first day of class, like what exactly is going to be happening here. I described to them very clearly what their responsibilities would be for participating in this seminar. And one of those was to use this web-based application for identification of relevant literature. We were going to cap the annotations at 10 for each student. We felt like if they got over 10, that's just too much of a workload for each of the individual students. We didn't quite get to 10 for anybody. As you'll see from some of the numbers that I present, each student in the fall semester had between 6 and 8 annotations that they were responsible for, and it was slightly fewer than that in the spring semester. So yes, there were a number of annotations that each of the students did, but we never got to that sort of maximum threshold that we had initially created. They had to update Zotero with their assigned journals. It was our desire that they regularly update Zotero and keep up to date on the annotations, but I'll talk about some of the challenges with students sort of keeping up. And as you might imagine, it wasn't a continuous stream of annotations and article identification over the semester. There were large uploads at different points in the semester, and that became a challenge. So the weekly seminar actually changed over the course of the 2 semesters. It was still focused on the articles that we were identifying for annotation, but in the fall semester, it was encouraged is the wrong word in that first sub-bullet under fall semester. The expectation was that students would present an article that they'd been assigned in Zotero for annotation, thinking that this seminar can help them think through their annotation, right? We're going to ask them to present one of their articles. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what its implications are to the field, and anticipating that discussion will facilitate their preparation of an annotation. Now, this wasn't possible for the first couple classes because we didn't have, we had just begun the process of article identification. So some of our initial presentations were articles that I had helped students identify for the first couple of class meetings. But once we got into the 4th or 5th week of the semester, students were presenting the articles that they had been assigned for annotation. Some of the feedback that I got from students at the end of the fall semester was that sometimes understanding the application of a new methodology was difficult for them. So we tweaked what the seminar was, what the in-person component of the seminar was in the spring. And in the spring, students were requested that one of the articles that be presented is an article that they'd been assigned, and then they were given a partner. And their partner in the spring semester was to find an application of that methodology, or an application of a methodology on which the new method was improving. So if there was a novel development in the area of propensity score methodologies, there may not be an application for this novel development, but there would be other articles where we could see where this novel development could fit. So we tweaked the seminar to focus on one of these sort of methodology papers that we'd identified, and then the follow-up discussion in the second half of the hour to talk about applications. And so the feedback at the end of the spring semester was that students appreciated this because they felt like that was the part that was missing. Now, these application articles did not obviously end up in our annotation library, but it was important for the students as part of their participation in the seminar. So in the fall, I had 17 students that participated in the seminar. I lost some of them in the spring and gained some others. In the fall, all of the students were from our program, from the graduate program in our department, and that's simply because of sort of advertising of the seminar. It just wasn't able to get it out in time for students to register for it because the timing of sort of notification of funding came about the time that the semester was starting. So I just launched it with largely focused on our students. Now, what the loss was largely due to students who were almost finished with the program, right? They wanted to focus on their dissertation and didn't see the seminar, especially the part where they were required to do all these annotations, as being a value added for them. It felt like more of a distraction for those that were at the end of our program. We also lost a couple of students in the first year who felt like they needed more didactic training to get anything out of this seminar, and so we saw losses on both ends. I did gain students from the School of Public Health in the spring, which was an important component to add to the experience and the areas of expertise within students in our program and in the School of Public Health. So it became a better mix in the spring semester. Now, some of the challenges was, as I initially indicated, as part of this seminar, the student workload wasn't completely clear to me and certainly to them. While we laid out these expectations, students really didn't have a sense of exactly how much time I'm going to have to allocate for this particular class. And it is somewhat variable. You can imagine that students who are assigned journals that come out weekly have more to keep on top of than students who have journals that come out quarterly, for example. And we did try to balance this across students, but it wasn't always possible. One of the other challenges was the experience in training of the graduate students. As I noted, it was somewhat difficult for a first-year graduate student, for example, in the fall semester to really understand some of the methodologies that we were talking about. And so they may have felt a little lost and really struggled with some of the annotations that they were assigned. And so that was another challenge that we experienced as part of this process. Probably the biggest challenge was encouraging students to keep on top of their annotations. We get a big bolus at the end of the semester, students knowing that they have to get through these annotations by the end of the semester to get credit for the class. Will oftentimes wait until the very end before they would upload all of their annotations. I tried to encourage them to keep on top of this through the course of the semester, but they've got to figure out how to balance their time across all of the classes that we're taking. And so this really is a big challenge in terms of keeping all of the website up to date, because some of the articles that we may be posting annotations for are 2 or 3 months old, and that's not horrible, but our goal was to be a little bit more timely than that. And so we're thinking about ways to sort of modify the incentive structure for students should we move this forward into the fall so that they're able to stay on top of this. And it may be sort of more than periodic check-ins, but other mechanisms to make sure students are staying on top of the annotation assignments that they have. Okay, so what have we done? I'm going to give you a sense of what we've done from a big picture perspective, and then I'll take you all to the website for 5 or 10 minutes, and then answer any questions that you might have about the process. And I know this is incredibly different from all of the other community calls that have been presented. I'm not talking about a use of the lab or novel methodologies, but I'm glad that Christine and everyone gave us the opportunity to talk about this resource that we're making available to you. So we've had 34 journals that have contributed at least one article to our library. Over the fall and spring semesters, we have identified 220 articles that we currently have in the library. Right now, there are just under 70 annotations on the website. There are an additional 40 annotations that are sitting in our private library, basically waiting for me to get through them. These were ones that were posted right at the end of the spring semester, so I've been working through them, getting them ready to upload in the last couple weeks. So very soon we're going to have more than 100 articles that are annotated and available on our website. Here's our current list of journals that are contributing articles to the CARMA website and our annotations. I think the big ones are probably ones that you would expect. We've got 41 articles that had come from Statistical Methods in Medical Research, 20 from the Journal of the American Statistical Association, 18 from Pharmacoepi and Drug Safety, 15 from Epidemiology, 11 from the Journal of the American Medical Informatics Association. And again, many of these are largely natural language processing studies that could be important contributions in terms of the area of pharmacoepidemiology and comparative effectiveness research. Okay, let me take you to our website. And as Christine mentioned, the link to the website is included in her email out. If you Google CARMA with a C and UIC, this should be the first hit that comes up. The website is housed within our department website, within our college website, within the university website. So it's several layers down into our website. And if you just went to UIC, it may not be that easy to get to. But if you go to the College of Pharmacy and our department, Pharmacy Systems, Outcomes, and Policy, it will be populated on the left-hand side under our research programs. So we have 3 pages basically that are a part of this website. We've got an introduction page that just really describes what CARMA is, what our goals are, and importantly acknowledges all the graduate students that have participated and the work that they have done in terms of making information available. So in addition to that landing page for the website, we've got a page that describes the seminar. And again, this is a way for us to advertise to students that are interested in, are potentially interested, or would potentially participate in the CARMA seminar. So in addition to advertising in our class directory, I can email this link directly to students in programs like the School of Public Health in the epidemiology program and the biostatistics program, so that they would get a sense of how this graduate level seminar might be important to them, because honestly, they're often not looking for classes in the College of Pharmacy, but if they know about it, may be very interested in taking a seminar like this. So we've got a landing page for the seminar that describes the objectives of the seminar and what students will be responsible for, again, so that they're aware, at least going in, what the expectations will be in terms of their participation in the seminar. And now let's get to the really important part, the meat of what our output has been so far. And this is our list of annotations. So here is, on this part of our website, are all of the annotations that we have completed to date. We've got 2 landing spots, annotations that have been uploaded in March and annotations that were uploaded in June. As I indicated, I'm going to be uploading 40 more relatively shortly. What is included for each article is the title of the article, and will actually link you to our Zotero public library for that article if you click on the link at the top of each one of those. It includes all of the authors, the journal that it came from, the abstract, and then importantly contains our annotations in this notes part. So each one of the articles in this list of 69 articles has a notes component at the end, and that is the annotation that the students have completed. And you can, again, scroll through this list, this long list, looking for articles that might be relevant to you. And this is why I've said it's not incredibly user-friendly, right? It's just this long, long list. You can use, find functions or search functions within your web browser to look for keywords, but knowing there's probably more efficient ways to do this, we provide this list, and it's great if you want to sort of look through each one of these that are uploaded at each one of our periodic uploads. But there is also a public version of the Zotero library that we've made available. And so there's a link on our website that will take you to Zotero that provides our public version of the CARMA library. And so what you'll have here is, I'll click on this group library link, and it will bring up all of the articles. You can see the authors, the titles, the publication date. These are all going to be 2015 articles and 2016 articles because that's our goal. But here's where I think the user friendliness is enhanced versus the long list that's included on our UIC website, is that there are tags, right? Each one of the articles, when they're uploaded to Zotero, all of the information about that article is brought in. Their keywords, the mesh headings, all of that information is brought in and added as tags for each one of those articles. So you can, if I'm interested in, causal inference or bias, any article that's got bias tagged in it is going to populate there. Or if I'm interested in Bayesian analyses and bias, so right, I can select one of these tags to search on. It also allows me to search for other keywords within this function. So this is, again, why I consider this a little bit more user-friendly. If I'm focused in one or two specific areas, this allows me to quickly identify the articles in those areas versus scrolling through that relatively long list of articles that we have on our website. So I'd encourage you to look through here and use what we have here as a resource. That's clearly the goal of what we've done. So let me go back now to the slides. I've just got a couple more left and talk about what we've accomplished today. Just give you a summary of where we're at. So we're definitely completing regular literature searches focused on new methodologies in comparative effectiveness and medication safety work. We're keeping up with our annotated summaries, although maybe not as timely as originally envisioned. We're getting them posted on websites. We've got the seminar in place. The thing that we have not done is this detailed review. And Patrick and I have sat down, we've looked through the articles that we've got in our public library and are beginning to determine an area or two that we think it makes sense to focus on to complete a detailed review of what basically has happened in the last year in these areas for in terms of the literature, and we'll be completing this over the course of the summer. So in closing, hopefully I've now made you aware of a resource available to you all and to the larger scientific community that includes annotations of contemporary research articles in this area of medication safety and comparative effectiveness research using observational data and observational methodologies. We still have work to do in terms of reviewing articles and summarizing, providing a review of one or two areas through which we've identified as part of the activities of the CARMA funding. Now, I hope to continue these activities into the future. It's not clear from a resources standpoint. I know that the seminar will continue. I've heard from students that they value the seminar, so I'm going to continue that in any way, shape, or form. It's just not clear whether or not we will be able to continue the annotations. We're hopeful that we have funding into the future to be able to continue this resource, because it doesn't do anybody any good if we can't continue to provide those annotations, and we're hopeful in being able to do that. So final acknowledgments, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you all have. We'd like to thank the Reagan-Udall Foundation for funding, and I really am indebted to the graduate students and the work that we've done, particularly to Patrick Zuger and the list of graduate students here on this page. If they would not have been willing to jump into the pool with both feet, we would not have been able to accomplish what we've accomplished to date, which I think is hopefully, again, a pretty decent resource for investigators and scientists within this field. And I think we've got just 5 minutes left until the top of the hour, so I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Great. Thanks again, Todd, for the wonderful presentation. So I'm going to now be unmuting everyone.
The conference has been muted. The conference has been unmuted. The conference has been unmuted.
Great. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to announce yourself and feel free to do so.
Todd, this is Alec Walker. This is just fabulous. Can you give us, it looks like there's been a tremendous amount of manpower put into this. if you were to guess at the number of graduate student hours and your own hours that it took to get this to the level that it is now, what would you guess? And that'll give us all a sense of what kind of resources, either paid for or volunteer, are going to be needed to keep this going.
Oh boy, Alec, a lot. I don't have. I'd have to really sit down and think about that, because I think that on average it's probably 2.5 hours a week for graduate students if I think about that spread over the course of a semester. For me, again, I get boluses at different points in time because of when these annotations are uploaded. I'm probably spending, when the annotations are uploaded, I'll spend several hours a week working through this stuff. If I sort of average that over the course of the funding period, I would say I'm spending 2 hours a week on CARMA-related activities.
Yep.
It's been maybe we are a little under-resourced, and that's okay, because I think in the big picture this has been phenomenal for our graduate students, and I hope we've produced I think we've produced what could potentially be a valuable resource. So it's been a win-win on many levels. Hopefully it's a win for the scientific community in terms of resources being made available to them, but it's certainly been a win for students in our graduate program and in the School of Public Health graduate program being exposed to some methodologies and some contemporary literature that otherwise they would have missed or not been aware of. It has helped broaden sort of areas in which they have thought about doing work in.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I think we have time to take one more question or comment from everyone. Okay. So I guess thank you everyone for joining the call today, and thank you, Dr. Lee, for presenting to us today. So our next community call will be on July 15th, and you will see an email from me with the topic of that discussion soon. So thank you everyone again, and have a great day.